The following story has been brought to you by StoriesToInspire.org.
Money. Big Nitzrach, a big Balchoivis, he has a chasna to make. The usual, never did this before in his life. He's a Yid, Mama sits on a Torah Lavaida generally. And he knows nobody in America, and he has no contacts. But someone gave him the number, and it's Israel of a driver in America. You call the driver, that's fine. So he calls the driver before he comes to America, and they may come, and he says, no problem. When he's arriving, such and such, says, next morning, let's say Wednesday morning, he says, be outside your house at 7 a.m., I'll pick you up. It's in Borough Park. I'll pick you up at 7 a.m. Fine. Making the shtadlos, right? Gets up in the morning, his talis and tefillin in the hand, and he waits outside, maybe even 5 to 7. 7 o'clock club, there's no driver. 7:15, no driver. 7:30, no driver. 7:45, so he's calling him on the phone, there's no answer. He says, Rebbe Shlomo, I made my shtadlos. He went across the street. He was staying across the street in Kleisberg on 50th Street in Borough Park. He went to Kleisberg's Medish. He sat down. He started davening with them, fine, davening geschmack. Then he sat down to learn. The guy's not calling him back. He probably calls him this stuff every half hour, but the guy's not calling back. There's this to learn. There's this to learn. Mamash, he's sitting and learning, He's sitting there. At maybe about 10 o'clock. The guy comes running into the base Medish. There aren't a lot of people left. And he's sitting there learning. The guy comes over to him and says, excuse me. He says, I can ask you for a favor? He says, yeah. He says, I'm going now to a mishpat. I'm going to a court, to Arkais. Someone is suing me for a lot of money. It's oiske trachta maisa, but lamaisa it's very, very besuk. It's very dangerous. And before I go to court, I want to do the right thing. He said, you're sitting here learning, here's $100. I want you to have me in mind, such and such is my name, this is my number, this and that. And he took this year's number also, he took his number. Fine. He says, in case anything during the day, whatever, call. So what do you do? He says, sure, I'll do it for you. $100. And as it's in the learned mamash geschmack, at about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, the guy calls him on the phone. And he says to him, and he's like out of breath. He's out of breath. He says, what's this? He says, I can't talk. I'm coming over. I'm coming to the base manager to see you. I'm coming over. I said, okay, come over. The guy comes running in a panic. And he goes over to him. He says, you're not going to believe what happened. He said, what happened? He's like, I come to the court case, and my lawyer doesn't show up. So he says, I don't know, I didn't show up. So I'm standing there, I say, what should I do? Should I tell the judge he didn't show up? I know that could predispose the judge against the case right away. What kind of lawyer doesn't show up? So I didn't want to say anything. So I'm standing there, and they call my name. I come up to the docket, and the judge says, it's obvious that you can't afford a lawyer. I don't know if you know, but they have free lawyers, this and that. Maybe you can't even know it. It's just not a problem. The fact that you're here, even without a lawyer, it shows respect for the court. So tell me, what's going on? So he tells him, he tells him the whole thing. This guy has charges against me. It's nonsensical charges. I didn't do anything of the sort, this and that. And that's the whole thing. The judge says, you look like a sincere guy. Case dismissed.
No way.
Case dismissed. So the guy comes into Kleisenberg. He says, you know why this happened? It's clearly because you're schus. It never happened. A lawyer shouldn't be there. And he says, and you're not going to believe this. On the way over here, my lawyer pulls me up. And he says to him, I'm so sorry. Never happened to me. I overslept this morning. In 32 years of practicing law, it never happened that I overslept. This morning I overslept. I can't believe it. He says, well, what happened in court? He says, you're not going to believe this. That's nice. So the Yid says, wow, mamash hashgacha pratis, gewaldig. The guy writes him out on the spot. He says, I was going to pay my lawyer $5,000. They gave him a check for $5,000. He said, I know you're making a chasana. In a week, I'm going to send you more money. And a week later, he sent him $10,000. Wait. The Yid is still sitting in the shul after the guy leaves, and the driver calls him. He says, you're not going to believe this. 30 years I'm driving a car. I never fell asleep. I never overslept. And this morning I overslept.
Crazy. Oh my God.
That's what I say. Got to make hishtadlos.
Enjoyed this story? Come again. Bring a friend. StoriesToInspire.org